Okay, hello.
Hey, what's up, buddy?
Yeah.
All right, all right. So, you ready?
Yeah.
All right, so just tell the people what we're talking about here.
If Kaguya is universal or not.
All right, cool.
Plus. We
Now,
need plus.
my thing is that I don't think a sufficient amount of evidence has been presented to support this claim. I don't think it's been thoroughly substantiated, at least by no standard of mine.
So you don't. I just want to make sure this is clear. You don't use the battle wiki. Yes, you use like your own.
I'm willing to use the battle wiki. I'd just like to hear a justification for it. Now, before I accused you of using an appeal to authority. Now, I said that because you kept insisting that the versus battle wiki definitions of thinking, without explaining why, which comes off to me at the very least like an appeal to perceived authority, a versus battle wiki rather than having some justification independent of that. You know what I mean? If you're appealing to everyone using it as the reason you use it, because you did mention that, it's just something that's used pervasively throughout the community, then that'd be more of an ad populum. If it's just because, it's traditionally used throughout these communities or in the broader versus battle community or just in general discourse, then it's more of an appeal to tradition. To put it more simply, you're not reasoning to me why it's the better concept as opposed to, say, OBD or just my personal scale. In fact, you're applying a lack of reason, if anything. So
Well,
I'd like to hear a
mainly. Yep.
justification for versus battle wiki if you have one.
Yep. When we're getting to Uni Plus, obviously you can't really scale it with just numbers. You. It's pretty much impossible because you have to qualify for something that's larger than infinite 3D. And the way the battle
What do we
wiki does
scale it
that
with?
is how
What do we scale it with?
usually time spaces or examples of a separate temporal
Yeah,
dimension
this is
or
happening in
a
DMs.
spatiality, like a time or a space time to say. In Naruto's case, they use a time space.
What are you basing this on? Are you basing this on real world scientific parameters for what we would consider a universe? Or are you appealing to, oh, I don't want to use the word appealing to as if I'm accusing you of something, but
Hmm.
are you speaking referentially to some other source? Why would I
I,
accept your definition of universal? Or
okay,
why should I? Not that I'm saying I don't. I would just like to know.
so let me get the definition up for real quick.
Go for it, man.
I lost like all my scans for Naruto, but I do have a few because I
Hey,
had
hey,
to get new
go
phone.
for it, buddy. Take your time. I just want to say what I was talking about before in regards to the appeal to authority. You did
Oh,
say it was an erroneous accusation before. Do you still believe that? If so, we can go over it.
And how I'm streaming this
well,
shit.
now that you made yourself clear, I can understand what you meant. Like how I did not explain why the battle wiki
Okay.
works as
But
it
it
was. I thought you
technically
were
will be
saying that
recorded.
I was appealing to authority because I was just using the battle wiki.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm just glad we cleared that up.
Okay, so when we're talking about Universal Plus, they talk about a character significantly affecting, and when we click on that, it goes to like explain how it's significantly affecting is used as an umbrella term. And for like feats that don't involve direct creation or destruction, but are comparable to them in power,
Is this
such
the
as like
versus
warping
battle
into.
wiki definition?
Yep, this is like what they're using right
Okay.
now, and then I'll
So,
explain why it's reliable.
okay, go for it.
No. So they talk about how it's comparable to them in power, such as warping and distorting the entirety of the structure in question, sustaining its existence with one's own, merging the structure with another one. So pretty much it's saying like warping, distorting, or shaking, something like
Mm-hmm.
that.
I've read it.
The
I just
entirety of.
want to know. Yeah, I read it. I just want to know why I should consider it reliable. Like, what's your justification for it?
Okay, so obviously, when they do it, they use a system where they measure by dimensionality. And obviously, if someone is 4D, they would be stronger than someone that's 3D because there's more capabilities that 40 person can do than a 3D person can do. And they go on to explain how a lot of fictional action, I mean, you will use space times as something like that either created or destroyed, which are usually a four-dimensional space. And when we go on, that's why when you get a separate temporal or spatiality dimension, like that's separate from like the main verse, whatever, that could be considered a uni plus feat.
Damn, that Jaro boy.
Okay, now I'm aware of versus Battle Wiki's dimensional scaling tiering system. I'm aware that it's used almost ubiquity in these little communities like TikTok and Discord, but still, I'm asking for a justification as to why. You explained the scale, and then you explained the subscale within it. right? You explained the energy scale, and then you explained the dimensional tiering scale that's within it. You haven't given me a justification yet. I
Yo, thanks
definitely
for the follow there.
understand, you know,
Appreciate
the
it.
parameters of science that you're trying to apply here, which would be like, you know, real world science, which I'm totally okay with applying, but you seem to have an issue with that when we were talking about it on TikTok. So I just want to know the
Hey, thanks.
justification.
Well, it's like
Thank y'all
it's like
for
to a certain extent. So
the support.
I'm gonna ask a question real quick so I can just make sure I. So when you
Just for that.
how would you measure to get to Uni Plus? Would you use a would you use a time space as well or a space time? My bad.
Just for
Would
that,
I
I
use a
might
space-time continuum?
feed that.
Perhaps, yeah. I think it's definitely circumstantial. I think it's a case-by-case basis. I don't think there is a blanket catch-all method of measurement that I could use to
Hmm.
determine in every single scenario whether or not something or someone is universal, because again, this is a very, very tricky subject that involves very hard geometry and hard science, like you were talking about projective
Yeah.
geometry before. And you know, and I'm not trying to, you know, take a knock at you or anything, but like you were like confusing it with like differential geometry, which is like, you know, more directly, which is more like directly applicable to like, you know, real world science. It's more like empirically supported as opposed to like projective geometry, which is more like theoretical, right? Like, so when I said that you
Hell
didn't
yeah.
really understand the science before, this isn't me trying to like condescend to you, because I don't really understand the science too well myself. I have a rough rudimentary understanding. This is like graduate level astrophysics.
We don't know
So I think it's a
yet.
little silly
They really
and,
just
you
started.
know, dare I say, just posturing for any of us to act like, yeah, we do have some in-depth understanding of that. So I just wanted to clear that up, because you seem to have a problem with me saying that before, as if I was trying to like put myself above the standard. That's definitely not the case, right? So
Yep.
again, I just want to go back to what I asked you before. Do you have a justification, you know what I mean, for the method of measurement that
Oh,
you're
yep, yep.
using?
Okay.
Sure, I
So
can
main
provide my own method of measurement, but why is yours viable?
So mainly is because, like you said, there's no really blanketed term. But when we're measuring for Uni Plus, you can't really just use numbers. It's just something that's quantifiably larger than an infinitely sized 3D-dimensional space. So, and like I said, a lot of action animes will use a time space, and they don't really fully go in depth about how a space time would be a space time. Like, for example, I think the only anime, I'm pretty sure I brought this up on a TikTok, that I can think of that even like dwells on like the subject of like special relativity is like Steins Gate. That's the only one I could think of that like by head.
At that point,
Like, but
I understand the standard that you're trying to apply right now, but at that point, it
mhm,
makes, you know, versus battle discussions superfluous and just, you know, totally, you know, just inert. You know what I mean? Because we can say that about just about anything. Let's just take Mach 1, for example. You know, just
mhm,
moving at about 340 meters per second or so, right? Now, there's no guarantee that the average mangaka has any understanding of velocity, or, you know, just like basic high school calculus, right? You know,
mhm,
unless you can, I can easily say, hey, unless you can prove to me that Kishimoto has
Hey,
an
thanks for the follow
understanding
there.
of like the, you know, distance by time formula and can reasonably calculate speed, there is no way that you can say Naruto is Mach 5, right? So when we start saying things like, yeah, well, sure, I want to say this character is universal, and sure, there might be some, you know, more meticulous mechanical aspects that might not be congruent with that claim, but at the end of the day, it's fiction and the author doesn't really know this stuff. I can make this claim for infinitum. I can reduce that claim to like total gibberish, because again, like, we can do that with Mach 1. We can do that with any
mhm.
feat at all. Any attempt at quantification in fiction can be just totally hand-waved with, the author doesn't know about that. So you're going to have to provide me a more supplementary argument if you're going to say that, yeah, you know, these mechanical incongruencies aren't really that important.
Okay. So you just want me to like give an example on why you a measuring using a time space would be
Mm.
a a justifiable reason to put a character at Uni Plus.
Yeah, just justify the method of measurement that you're using, which is, you know, versus battle wikis. I'm not even saying it's wrong. I just need to know why I should accept it. We can't just dogmatically agree to everything just because everyone else is doing it, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
That's what leads to people saying all sorts of crazy shit on here. I'm sure you've seen a lot of shit you disagree with. That just seems so obviously wrong. You know what I mean? But,
yeah.
you know, rumors spread, people don't do their research, and, you know, shit happens. So we just have to question things when we're confronted with them. Go ahead.
So, another way I would justify this is it. it kind of touches on how it uses dimensionality and how if you're like 40, it'd be stronger. And which in short, it's kind of just pretty simple that, well, since a space-time would be 4D, a and since you can obviously tell that a time space or a space time would be a separate temporal dimension, if a character would destroy that,
Bro, you
he
still
would
want people to
obviously
fight
need
for
more
your
power
point.
than infinite 3D, which is high universal, and high universal is infinite 3D. So if you can destroy
That's the
something
thing.
that
I
is,
can see why you believe that. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But that's actually not the case, you know. And if you thought about it, if you really think about it, you can see how it's not the case yourself. Like just by virtue of the expansion of the universe, right? Like the universe, you know, used to be a one-dimensional point in space, right? Infinitely small, right? It
Yeah,
expanded very quickly, you know what I mean, over, you know, X amount of time. At one point it was the size of a pin, then a ping pong ball, then a beach ball, then a house, right? So this space-time continuum was very much so not, quote, universal in the way that we would describe it meaningfully, as in X amount of energy to destroy like a space that contains matter that's about like 900 billion light years in diameter, right? Because that's what
yeah,
we traditionally mean when we say universal. So just because something is a space-time continuum, even if I do operate under the assertion that, you know, Kaguya's dimension that she created was indeed 4D, you know, traditionally Euclidean space-time continuum, which I don't necessarily do. But even if I did, that wouldn't obligate it being universal either, right? Because as I said, just by the virtue of universal expansion, you know, that's not, you know, a necessary, you know, conclusion.
hmm
So I would need a different argument than that.
Okay, so when we are talking about the time spaces, do you agree that they're like separate from the main like uh dimension or the main verse? My bad.
I don't know. Are they?
I would argue that they are.
Why?
I shouldn't have just stood
I
there.
will send a scan real quick, I believe.
Mm.
Just explain to me why. I'm not
Okay,
really
okay.
gonna scan shark you or
Well,
anything unless I think that you're particularly dishonest for some reason, which I don't. I'm not really going to be asking you for scans every 10 seconds.
but pretty much, in the manga, the second Hokage, he explains how like Naruto and them are in like a alternate uh time space, or as they use it,
Oh
Naruto
shit.
time space, which is one of the Kage's dimensions. So if it's alternate, it's not necessarily linked to the verse world. And
He said
Obito goes
specific.
on to,
He said alternate time space.
yeah.
What does that mean? Is that supposed to be space time? Is that what
Yeah.
Naruto means by
Yeah,
time space?
that's what they do because they use the kanji like GQ, and uh, I can show that if you want me to. Uh, but which means like space time, but for some reason when they translate it from like visit goes as time space.
Oh, okay.
See, Imperial mandate.
If you want, I can get it for you real quick.
Let's just grab this real quick.
Okay, sure. Hey, I'm willing to grant that it's possible that Kaguya could, in
Oh,
theory,
thanks for the follow,
create,
guys.
you know,
LOL Man
structures that
69,
are
thank
4D.
you.
Yeah, I mean, that might have a
hmm
space-time
Iggy's
component. I don't necessarily think that makes
Iggy's my
her
game
4D.
37, thanks
Yeah, I
for the
mean,
follows, guys.
based on the nature of like this specific circumstance. But I can admit that it could be a 4D attack. But there's a strict disconnect between that and universal. And I feel like this distinction, like this line, has been blurred to fuck in the past like 2 years as far as like broader versus battle discourse goes.
hmm
You know, you can very easily be fucking building level in 4D, okay? You can
Oh
be
shit.
town
Yo, where are
level
you?
in 4D, you know? I'm
Yeah, I can
going to need,
understand where you.
yeah.
Okay, guy.
So, you know, I would need some level of evidence to say that this is universal. Because, okay, a lot of people say that there was a star,
Sheesh, dude.
right, in this
Why are you
dimension,
staying still?
right? Now,
W key.
this
hmm
doesn't mean anything. This doesn't obligate that it's the size of a solar system. This doesn't obligate that it's even the size of a large star. You know, that star could be tiny, you know? It could be zero point 0.5 solar masses for all we really have no idea. The planet they could have been on could have been like half the size of the moon, one third the size of the moon. We have no fucking idea. You would have to give me some sort of evidence to justify some arbitrary diameter for the universe, which I think is almost impossible for you to give me, right?
Yep. Yeah, I can understand that.
Oh shit.
Okay, so I got the scans real quick. Sorry, it took a
or
little
even
long.
star level at that point. You know what I mean? It seems that
Mhm.
star level is a giant stretch for Kaguya right now. I'm open to hear arguments, but
I'm gonna just go.
it doesn't look good, bud.
Okay, I went ahead and
Keep
sent
the knee.
this. So the first one is pretty much the second scan where it talks about how she emerged from a different time space, and they do use the kanji for space-time continuum. I just don't know why they translate it to time space because I have more
That's totally
websites that are
fine.
different
That's
translators.
that's
Yeah, if you want.
that's
Yeah.
totally fine. That's totally fine. It can be a space-time continuum all at once. I'm totally willing to allow that assertion just to continue on with the debate because I
Yep.
think it's really irrelevant. Like, do you have any evidence for me to, reasonably assume that it's universal and not like, I don't know, planetary?
Mainly, if not, like it never gives the exact size in like the fiction
Appreciate
itself
it.
on why it's universal,
So
which is where
you
like
don't have
Hasdor.
one. So you don't have one.
Well, I'm getting there. If we can use how the time spaces are
Oh
separate from the
shit!
like actual verse
I got
and
caught out.
how
I'm
the
out of the
time
way.
time spaces are gravitation around like these stars that are part of like the space times.
Not
I
Shin in
think
the
you're
jungle.
You mentioned Hausdorff's dimensions very, very, very briefly. I think you might be
Oh yeah,
misunderstanding what that might be in reference to, right? Now, this is talking about like dimensional planes, right? Just directions in space, right? You can
yeah.
create a
Hasdor.
space-time. Yeah, you can create a structure, like a little space-time structure that can exist in like four different spatial directions. Because again, like time is just like a different direction in space that we
Yeah,
can't
that was some
access,
shit I
right?
was watching.
Because like
Yeah,
just like height or length or width, it's just a direction in space, right? So we can create a space-time structure that can reach this direction of space, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that it's infinite. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean it is, the fourth dimensional plane, right? Which would what
hmm
like the only way Hausdorff dimensions would be relevant.
No, I was gonna take this shit.
yeah. I was just talking about like Hasdor dimension projective geometry because like the way Battle Wiki uses it is like they use the concept of it and like how a higher dimension encompasses infinitely more mass and aspects than a being who inhabits a lower
I,
dimension plane.
I
So
understand that, but
yeah.
you've yet to provide a justification for versus battle wiki, so I don't even think it's worth talking about at the moment. But another thing I wanted to mention, you said I appeal to reality. I felt like that was really odd. You want to talk about that for a minute?
Sure. So,
Okay,
Yeah.
so if what you
go
mean
ahead.
by an okay, if what you mean by an appeal to reality is just using a real world concept to describe a fictional world, which is all that I've done, then you have to disagree with using any physics concepts, any mathematical concepts, just science in general. No philosophy
Oh,
concepts,
really?
unless the series
Yeah.
specifically and concepts just. Oh shit! I just heard myself like crazy. Somebody was echoing, but unless the series explicitly invokes those concepts, right? So, an example: saying a character is planetary
Bands Leone.
says the character produces a kinetic energy equivalent to that needed to overcome the GBE of a planet. We usually measure this in TNT tonnage conversion, right? Which is just we take X yield in joules and then we say, how many tons of TNT would produce this amount of energy? And then we just use that as a catch-all unit because it's just easier to quantify things that way, right?
AP Bowl.
hmm
So me just mentioning that I'm not entirely convinced that the differentiable manifolds that comprise Kaguya's little dimension are like confirmed Euclidean doesn't really mean that I'm appealing to reality, which is saying X is impossible in fiction because X is impossible in reality. I'm just using the same parameters for measurement that you are. I'm just holding you to your own standard here. So again, I think that's really, really strange. Do you stand by that at all, or have I clarified that?
Well, like I just want to make sure I get this correct because I think I'm sure we got like the same understanding of like what appeal to reality is. Like character A can't go faster than light because character A is human and humans in real life can't go faster than light. Whatever.
Hmm.
That's
Oh, yeah. I
that's what
totally
I think
agree that
appeal to
in
reality would
fiction,
be.
yeah, I totally agree that in fiction, Kishimoto, if he wanted to, can create some pseudo universe that's, totally nonsensical, that's comprised of, 7 or 8 non-Euclidean dimensions that are just, and the geometry inside it is totally fucking stupid. But that wouldn't really be a universe in the meaningful sense that we're describing it here, right? For us to say
Mhm.
like, well, that would be a universe would just be like a false equivalent. That'd just be us equivocating two things that are very, very much not the same, right? Which, you know, doesn't make for constructive conversation. You would agree with that, right?
GNS,
Yeah.
JN Slack, thank you for the
All right,
follow.
so I'm glad we cleared that up too. But yeah, I'm waiting on that justification. As it stands, I'm hard pressed to believe Kaguya is even star level, let alone universal.
So if we before we like move on, so like you say, not even star level. With the actually, I have the scan now that says it's an alternate dimension. So I went ahead and sent that. Pretty much it talks about a time space, and pretty much it talks about how Kaguya's dimension are not like connected to the uh main verse.
That's
And with
totally
these,
fine.
yep, with these time spaces though, there's these stars, moons, and like higher gravitational effects, and different ones as shown. I don't know if I have the scan. There's one. I don't know. I'm pretty sure you
Do
would
you
know
have
where.
do you have volume or mass measurements for these celestial bodies? Can you prove that they would indeed comprise enough mass that if destroyed via, you know, whatever energy, it would produce a yield that, you know, can be considered star level? Because we do have a threshold here. Can you do that?
As of right now, I don't think I can.
Well, then you can't substantiate that claim. And once again, I'm hard pressed to believe that Kaguya is even star level, let alone universal.
So would you agree that the stars were part of her dimension though? And
Sure.
okay, what? How would you? Let me see how I can word this. What would you say on how like the gravitational like effects of that one of the dimensions can do? Like that are like more heavy that press down more than said like another dimension where the stars may not be as big.
I would assume that whatever planet they're on is probably maybe supermassive. Maybe it's just a bit larger than Earth. Maybe 10 times larger than Earth. Who knows? Maybe something like that. I really don't know.
Hmm.
I don't really um, see how that's necessarily relevant. Maybe I just
Well,
don't
like,
understand.
because there was like a sun orbiting, or not a sun orbiting,
That's
the planet itself was like orbiting around the sun, right?
wait, ooh, a sun.
Or a star.
That's okay. A
My
star.
bad.
How big is the
Bad name.
star? Once again, I would need some level
Well,
of evidence to confirm a diameter, so we know how big this star is, because that star could be tiny. You know what I mean? That star could
well,
be.
yeah, well, like since we don't have like the
Yo, did I cut out or did he cut out?
He got out. Yo, we
Oh
just got
shit.
out, bro.
Oh shit. I'm gonna wait for boy to come back. You guys fucking with right now.
So, chat, who you think is winning right now?
Yo, I'm just flaming the fuck out of Jade Season Fingerprint in the goddamn chat, bro.
Who you guys think is winning right
Sorry,
now?
did I cut out?
Let me get a
Yeah, you
let me
cut
get a
out, Brody.
one for Weeb. Let me
Alright,
get a
So I
let me
was
get a
asking
two for
you,
Mikey.
yeah, can you, I don't know, provide any level of evidence
Oh,
to
shit.
confirm a diameter for this star, so I know it's not like 1/100th the size of the sun,
Oh.
and therefore infinitely smaller than, you know, star level, just in regards to the measurement of its yield. Because we
Well,
can, because
yep,
if
go
you
ahead.
want, I can provide the minimum threshold for what would be considered like an energy release that would be considered star level. You know, it's corroborated by several different sources, including Versus Battle Wiki, which you seem to be fond of.
Yeah, I'm pretty new at League, dude.
Hmm. So, like you just said with the gravitational planet where the gravity was a lot more denser and heavier on even Kagi itself, she was affected by it. That mean, and you said to a certain extent, I'm not going to say that it's
So,
exactly
like,
10 times bigger than
unless you
Earth,
have
whatever, but it
anything, like
is,
any tips or
it would have
anything,
to
I
be a
can
little bit
essentially
larger to have such a
shut the fuck up
Sure.
gravitational
about that shit.
effect
You want?
on
Okay,
said
sure.
person.
Sure. How
So,
about this? I'll say it's 100 times larger than Earth. Okay. Well, we'll say it's 100 times larger than Earth. So we'll give it
mhm.
planet plus. Are we
Yep.
cool? Are we cool on that?
Yeah, that should be fine.
All right. Planet plus Kaguya. Let's go.
Yeah, dude.
Now,
I'd love to live on Mars.
with
As long as you
certain
take care of me.
aspects of like how there was a star orbiting
Exactly,
around
yeah.
that planet, you would agree that that star would need to be at least big enough to maintain its own like gravitational pull, since like the Earth is orbiting around it, or the
Sure,
planet, I should say.
sure. Sure, you want to
Now,
bump it up to large planet?
with what, the
Nah,
star or
yeah.
the
This is
planet
The
like a
star,
itself?
main
yeah. We can
character.
say this. Yeah, we can say the star is
Leona.
big enough for this very large planet to orbit around it. We can bump it up
They
to
banned
large
Leona.
planet plus Kaguya. You cool with that?
May I ask why the planet would just be, or the star would just be like a large planet?
Because even if it is like, you know, say 100 times larger than this planet that's 100 times larger than Earth, it would still be several thousand times beneath the minimum threshold that would be required to consider something star level. Like the sun is many millions of times larger than Earth, my friend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe you can like fit like 100 million or whatever.
Yo,
Yeah, it's big as fuck, bro. So if we want to talk about star level, you're gonna have to give me more than that, man. I'll like, I'm willing to be charitable and give Kaguya a large planet,
man.
even though I don't
Yeah,
really believe
let me
that.
get my dog. He's whining real quick. Give me like 2
Go for it, dog. Take your time.
Bro.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry, he was
I can,
whining. So where were we? Sorry. About yeah, star. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. We're talking about a large planet Kaguya.
Let me see if I can get these. I had a bunch of scans, but I lost a lot of them on my old phone. So I have a lot of them in DMs though. So but I have to scroll. Sorry if it takes a minute.
Yo, Stefan, shut up.
Bro, I'm just mad they banned Leona, man. Like, god damn, chill out.
Now, I'm pretty sure there's a scan talking about how the dimensions are linked, and that she was going to destroy it, like all the dimensions.
Okay, that's cool.
And
Mexico mid.
I'm trying to
How
find
many
it.
dimensions were there? We'll say all. Okay, how many dimensions were there? We'll say all of them were like Planet Plus or large
6,
planet.
I believe.
Six-
Either
okay,
6 or
let's say.
5.
All right, let's say all of them were Planet Plus. Are you cool with that?
Go ahead.
All right, so. Oh, actually, better yet, let's say it's all of them were. Excuse me. Large planet. So. See, she destroyed all of them at once. I will give you, my friend, because like you've been really cool so far. I'm glad you've come to talk. I will give you small star Kaguya, no cap.
We're back.
So yeah, anything else, or are we good here?
No, we're good here. That was fun.
Hey, thanks for coming by, man. A good discussion. You know, you're definitely more civil than most, and I really appreciate that.
I don't mind.